Do you want to start the episode?
No, I think you should start the episode.
I insist. You should start the episode.
No, really. Please start the episode.
You guys sound like a couple people pleasers.
Honestly, same. I don't know how to turn that into an intro.
I forgot that was not right.
Used to sound like a couple of people pleasers.
And cue the song. Honestly, same.
Ooh, honestly, same.
Honestly, same.
Honestly, same.
Honestly,
Honestly,
same.
same. Honestly,
Honestly,
same.
same. Honestly, same.
Honestly, same.
Honestly, same.
Honestly, same. I'm not singing this time. You got me good. Fool me once.
Sing.
Ross, put that out. Sing.
The people want it.
There is
You're
Brittany,
crying.
and she started to cry. She had some
It's my
teardrops
allergies.
come down from her eye.
Yes. Yes.
I'm not gonna keep
Ocean is big and ocean is scary.
Ocean scary. I'm gonna start picking this up. I just.
You start-
Ocean scary.
Oh my God.
I think I probably messed it up. Sorry, everyone.
This is chaos. This is absolute
Well,
chaos.
this is because we're doing a late night podcast. It may look like it's daytime in here,
Maybe.
but that's just Ross's magic.
It's 3 a.m. It's 3 a.m. in the morning.
I'm drinking a seltzer.
I'm drinking a seltzer.
Well, folks, this is not.
Listening to Trey.
Listening to Train.
Okay, a few moments ago, I'm like, Brittany's singing. She goes, how
You
fucking
said,
dare
okay.
you ask me to sing?
You said no, seriously, let's start.
This is unfortunately not a musical episode, you guys.
We can make it a
Yeah, we'll
musical.
see. Is that what you want? If you want, I will sing.
I see what you're doing
Do
there.
whatever you want.
I see what you guys are doing here.
Screaming.
Well, the outside of screaming and singing and crying, you're trying to be some people pleasers.
Maybe a little bit.
So maybe that's what we do right here on this episode of Honestly Same. My name is Ross.
My name is Leah.
And I'm Brittany.
Through teary eyes, we are going to talk all about people pleasing. Okay, so let's just dive into it. I feel like this is something that for years, maybe I kind of like, I can identify I had some issues with, where I would kind of let myself be walked on. I would not necessarily always stand up for myself when I needed to. But I honestly, spoilers, folks, to just spoil the end of the story, I feel like now, over the last handful of years, like it's almost non-existent for me.
Ross is not so honestly same this episode.
How do you fix it?
Honestly, not that same.
Honestly,
I feel like-
cannot relate.
Yeah, can't relate.
Yeah, honestly can't relate. Hashtag
The other
can't
show,
relate.
can't relate.
The other show. Yeah, we'll put that one on that one. But I know both of you
on our
guys.
Patreon.
That's the
There we go.
my spinoff show, Can't Relate, on the Patreon. $95 tier on that one. So
The tiers that we
Every
have.
time he just adds
And-
more money.
Last week it was 55. For like nudies, I'm pretty sure.
oh yeah.
This is way better content.
way better than my nudes. Come on. Giving out advice? What is this?
Fair enough, fair enough.
My advice is this. Never
Don't
mind.
even get started.
Never mind. So the reason we're doing an episode on this is because I feel like both of you guys have said you're people pleasers.
Yeah.
Is
Yeah.
this true?
Yeah.
Okay.
is true.
Explain to me.
Well,
Explain
it's
to me.
awful.
Kick us off.
I feel like I am bad at setting boundaries. I'm bad at saying no. I'm bad at standing up for myself, even though I know that I should stand up for myself. And it's in everyday situations that are not important, but also everyday situations that are important.
Okay.
Yeah,
Brittany?
mine's the exact same. Mine is down to like, if someone asks me to do a really hard task that I don't think that is like made for one person, I'm still gonna try my best, even though I know it's like a load of work and I should ask for help. Down to like, if someone like says wrong, I think we've talked about this on a different episode. If someone's like trying to tell me something and they give me like wrong information, and I know the right information, the best thing to do would be to correct them, but I so badly don't want to hurt their feelings that I just let them sit with the wrong thing, and I'm like, that's great.
I used to do that. I was big on like not wanting to make somebody feel bad or feel awkward or weird, so I would just be like, "Oh, yeah, sure," or like I would feel weird about correcting them.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't even be something major that I would correct them about. They'd be like, oh, you wore a blue shirt that day, right? And if I knew it was like a red shirt, I would be like, yeah, something like that. Like, you know, like,
Yeah.
because I just wouldn't, you know what I mean? Like, whether it
Yeah.
was big or small. So, like, I used to.
Even if it was your
yeah.
favorite red shirt.
Even
Yeah.
if it was my
and
favorite red
those
shirt.
things are usually fine. When I think about mine, I think about like my last job, and you had to have a lot of like product knowledge,
Mm-hmm.
and people would just say things that were wrong, and not like harmfully wrong. Like it would be fine. It would be like a product story or something like that, and I just would not, even though that was my literal job to correct them and be like,
Right.
but so like ingrained in me to not like hurt anyone's feelings ever, that I just would be like, that's great, and like move on as fast as possible.
Okay, so where do we think that comes from? That's, I'm interested to know, like, was it just like always, and like even for me, like I'm trying to also figure out like, where do we think our people pleasing tendencies came from? Like, where does it start, do you think? Do you feel like you could pinpoint it? Or is it just like a thing that's like, I don't know. Like I could say mine like came from, which we've talked about on other episodes, like my whole dynamic with the stepmom I used to have. It was, you know, I had to walk on eggshells and be terrified as a child. So I did become the like, oh, I just want to avoid all conflict, and I just want to, I would become a people pleaser just to avoid it. But at the same time, it gave me this weird 50-50 thing though. 50% of me wanted to avoid the conflict. 50% of me wanted to just solve it and go head on. You know what I mean? Just like, no, this is dumb. I don't want to experience this.
Yeah.
So like, I feel like I always had a back and forth dynamic for a while, and then as I grew up, I got rid of that other 50%.
Yeah, and that's the struggle that it is, because it would be easy if it was just like, I'm gonna let this happen and that's fine. But the struggle is the thing that you go through internally, where you're like, I shouldn't have to put up with this thing that I'm putting up with, and
When you're
know,
just
and you're
so
Yeah.
self-aware, and
Yeah.
you want, I just learned the word for this. I don't know what it is, and I wish I did for this episode, but when you are so like highly sensitive and you just assume everyone else around you is, so you're already like, you know that this was too big for you to ask this of me, but you already asked, so you're already disrespecting me, but I don't know how to say no, so I'm gonna say yes, but I know deep down that you know
what
that
you're
this,
doing.
yeah.
See, so this is something, I feel like we've probably all talked about it, but I do remember you and I, Brittany, talking about this of like learning to meet people where they are. And so in what you were talking about, like something that I always used to do would be, I would assume, oh, they have the exact same knowledge as me. They have the exact same understanding as me. And they have, you know, they're just as sensitive as
have
I
to know,
am
yeah.
to this situation. So there's no way that they don't know. So I would put their perspective on a pedestal. And what I would honestly also do is, if someone had a different opinion than me, not for like major things, like is it cool to kill people, but like basic things, right? Or like simpler things. When someone would have a different opinion than I would I would do this weird thing for the longest time where I would automatically be like, oh, they're right, I'm wrong. In an effort of like, they must understand it better than I do. And I don't want to like step over that line of like, okay, I
Like,
need
you almost
to.
don't even want to start the conflict of disagreeing with them, so you're just kind of like, okay, that's...
Or sometimes it just like their opinion, the way
accept
that they portray it, the way that it comes out sounds so much like fact that you're like, I can't
What's-
negate this the way that you've
Yeah.
approached me with it.
It's what you were saying of like, oh, they must be as aware as I am. So then I'm like, oh,
so when they
well,
say that,
if I was sharing my opinion, I would be super confident in it. And to be honest, there's not a lot of times that people share their opinions with full confidence. They sort of just spew stuff out of their minds. But like, I would always look at it as that. So I was like, oh, they must be right. I don't know. I shouldn't, and it's not even about arguing or anything, but I shouldn't be combative with that. Right. They're smarter than I am, I guess. Like, I don't know, in an effort to kind of be that people pleaser type. But like something that we've talked about over the years is like, I feel like I started switching all of that into like, no, I need to remember to like, I can meet people where they are. And rather than like, because again, what I used to do was like, oh, well, like they must be where I am, or they must be over here. They must be in this understanding or something. And then if there was a difference, it was like, why don't they understand it the same way I do? Or I've got to like belittle myself or something, rather than just being like, no, I get that this is this person's perspective. This is where they're coming from, whether it's from an understanding, an education standpoint, or how educated they are on the topic or whatever, or even just like an emotional standpoint of like, okay, what is their kind of like their emotional intelligence for this thing. Like, I don't know, like I feel like I've gotten really comfortable with understanding where someone is with something and not worrying about like, oh, they have to see it the same way I do, or I have to give in to where they're seeing it from. I'm very much like, oh, okay, we might see it differently. And sure, I might share some information with you to try and get you to see it my way or whatever. And it's not about like an opinion being different or something, but more so just like, oh, I know how I need to communicate this with you.
That's what I was going to say. Where I've grown is like being able to step back a little bit, because before I would just pretend nothing was wrong, even if like everything was wrong. And now I can be like, I don't agree with what's going on, so I'll like step back. And that is like growth as far as people pleasing for me, is kind of just like taking myself out of whatever the situation is instead of arguing or just like giving in. Just being like, I don't know if we're going to agree in this moment, so I'm going to.
Yeah, well, that's the interesting thing. I think sometimes when people think of like being a people pleaser, they think that the opposite is just arguing. It's like, I feel like I've had that conversation with people where they're like, oh, you're either giving in of like, oh no, you go ahead, you can do it, blah, blah, blah. Or it's like, oh, well, you don't have to agree with them. Like, even when I'm saying like, yeah, you don't have to agree with everybody, somebody could hear that and be like, so I'm just supposed to argue with everybody all the time. You know what I mean? Like, there's a middle ground and a balance to it all.
You can agree to disagree.
Yeah. Like, not everything has to be like, oh, we think differently or feel differently, that means we're so different or something. It's like, no, again, meeting each other where you are, finding that balance in the middle. And it, like you were saying, like, it doesn't have to be that, it doesn't have to be an argument.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be oh, just because we think differently, then there's this, or just because you see it differently, then we're just on opposing sides, and that's just it.
Yeah, and I think I've never really struggled with like opposing views as something as far as like my people pleasing side of things. So I think I definitely like the agree to disagree thing is not only important because you're never going to agree with every single person on every single thing, but also like you can respectfully like still be like respectful towards somebody by saying like, well, I don't really see it that way, but that's okay that you do.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I
See,
think
my
people,
brain, that sentence could never come out of my mouth.
Really?
That's what I want to say. Beautiful. That's so easy. I will literally just figure out how to get out of the conversation or change the subject or whatever.
There are definitely certain subjects and certain people and the way that, maybe they go about the subject in a way where like, you're like, I know that you're wrong and I don't want to get into this because it's just not worth it.
Yeah, and it really depends on the circumstances. If it's my family, I'm very much myself and will hold my ground and things like that. But the outside world and people outside of that, it's so hard.
Yeah.
So, Leah, what does your version of people pleasing look like then?
I think my version of people pleasing is more so like, it's more so when people overstep boundaries that I cease to place.
Or
so
that you just assume with common
that
decency
everybody-
would
yeah.
those boundaries were already in place.
Exactly. So, just like as like an everyday example, there was a time I was standing in line at Meijer and there was like a really long line, and it was my turn, and so I was walking to the checkout like thing, and this lady walked in through like where you walk out of the self-checkout, and she already had a bunch of bags, and it looked like she maybe just forgot to scan something, and so she literally just like walked into the exit. We made eye contact. She saw me walking to this like specific register, and she just like went to it.
And you're just like, I'm a whole human with a whole existence that I'm trying to like.
It would have been so like you said, so simple to just say, ma'am, the line starts back there. And it didn't have to be disrespectful. It didn't have to be a conflict. But in my brain, I was just like,
You just watched her do it. Did she
okay,
just do it?
She just did it.
Yep.
She just did it, and I couldn't, and I thought about it. I'm not even kidding. I called my mom and talked to her about it for like 30 minutes. Like, I thought about this for weeks.
I, at Target, like a couple weeks ago, apparently took too long at self-checkout because I was using a gift card and like my card, so I had to like pull the thing off the back of the gift card. I added an extra like 45 seconds to my thing, and the lady behind me was like, Jesus Christ, lady. And I
What?
just was in shock. Yeah, that it was taking me
Well,
like an
that's-
extra minute. So I just did. I just
It's
pretended I
almost
didn't
the
hear
audacity.
her.
Like,
Yeah.
you almost are like, do you really have the audacity that you're being this disrespectful to me right now? I actually was working on a client today who, like, whenever clients come in and they go, I've been thinking today, like, about this appointment, and I think I might want bangs. And as somebody who has done hair before, and I'm sure you can relate to this, Ross, maybe not so much. You've probably never had bangs
Nope.
or desired bangs. It's a commitment. It's a big commitment. And when people say, I think I want this, I'm like, I don't function on I think when it comes to that. So I was like, let's meet in the middle. We'll do something that's like longer than like a full bang so that it grows out quicker and is tuckable and stuff. But you have like the experience of having hair around your face in this area, kind of a thing. And we're sitting there back and forth talking about this. And this client, my coworker's client, I could hear her from like the other like salon chair, and she goes, God, just get the bangs, they'll grow back or something. And I was just like, this, and not to mention this was this girl's first time ever even considering it. She's never had bangs in her entire life.
And why
are you
couldn't that
listening?
lady get back in line? Why couldn't my lady wait 45 seconds? Why couldn't your lady mind her own fucking business?
Yeah, and it's like one of those things where I'm like, it's such blatant disrespect that I'm almost like, the audacity literally shakes me to a point where I'm like, I don't even know how to respond to this because you are so disrespectful and foolish to look at this situation the way that you're looking at it, and like you're the only person involved here. So I don't know if it's within my thing where I'm like, if I try to say something, it's going to turn into something because I'm so, like, the fact that you even said that right now,
So highly
like,
sensitive.
yeah, like I will either cry, like trying to be like, what is your problem, and trying to like be like, hey, you realize, like, you know, like, I'm at the self-checkout, like I can take my as long as I want. There are multiple registers here, and I'm sure that if you were 70 years old, nobody would be sitting there going,
you're just lucky that I am who I am, because I could have made your Target experience a lot longer if I wanted to.
Yeah.
If I had the courage today.
yeah. And that's the thing is, like, I've had clients, and this is a big one for me, especially like running my own business and things like that. And I'm sure I've told you guys this story before. Probably about this time last year, I had a client that like no-showed me 3 times in a row, like within a week. And so therefore wasted at least 3 hours out of like my week. And that's money that I was not going to see. At the time, I was working at a salon for commission. We had a cancellation policy. The first time it happened, I was like, oh, it must have been a misunderstanding. Didn't even bother telling them that there was a fee. I was like, they're coming in tomorrow, it will be fine. Well, then they didn't come in tomorrow. My front desk person charged them the fee. The lady kind of huffed and puffed on the phone. Her husband came to the salon and was screaming at my front desk girl about this fee that he was charged, which was 50% of a children's haircut, mind you. So it was like $17. And he was like, I spend so much money at this salon and I blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, but what does that have to do with respecting your time?
Exactly. And so just to avoid the conflict, I think my front desk person said, we can just allocate that payment towards your next appointment. I was not around for this, by the way. She comes up to me later and I was like, well, that's not how that works. And so I was like, I'm not going to give them 50% off of the next haircut after they didn't show up for the last 2. That does not make sense to me.
When your receptionist said that, then I would have followed that. I would have been really upset inside.
Well, no, and that's what, I didn't, so, okay. That whole thing happens. And I was like, well, I shouldn't, and keep in mind, I'm working for commission. So not only does that $17 that was the fee, like, it's half of what I'm getting like less than $8 for that.
Yeah.
So you just, like, this person literally thought, oh, you deserve less than $8 for the 3 hours of time that you spent sitting there waiting for me to show up. And to me, in my mind, I was like, that is so ridiculous that this person couldn't put that together. And so for a literal, like, I think they were supposed to come like a couple days later. So that was 2 times in a row. They were supposed to come a couple of days later, and I was like, for those entire days leading up to that, it was all I could think about was, you need to say something. You're not going to give them that discount because you can't let yourself be that person because you deserve payment for your time. And so I was ready to like say it. They didn't show up for the appointment.
Again?
Yeah. So 3 times within a week. So I call them. They're 15 minutes late at this point, and I hear her in the background going, "Oh, honey, we forgot about your haircut again." Yeah. And so she goes, "Well, when's your next available?" And at that point, I should have said, "You know what? It seems like we have a disconnection here of some sort. Maybe you should find some other salon to go to." I said, "Wednesday."
Yes.
And so they came on Wednesday. And I actually, she was like, "Oh, and of course I'm so sorry. This is not like us," and blah, blah, blah. And I said, "I understand that, things come up. I can be flexible. I can be understanding. But, I don't think you realize that, the first time, we didn't even, call them or anything. I realized that they had an appointment the next day, and I thought it was a scheduling conflict. And so I said, I don't think you realize that this is the third time in a row that this has happened this week." Mm-hmm. And she's like, "Well, I thought there were only 2. And I said, "No, you actually had an appointment on this day, and this day, and you didn't show up for any of them. And then your husband came down here and caused a scene, which, is very inappropriate, and blah, blah, blah." And what I wanted to end by saying was, "If you do this again, you cannot come back to me." Mm-hmm. But I ended up saying something along the lines of, "If this happens again, we're going to have to explore other options." Something along those lines. But all the things I wanted to say, could not make it out of my mouth. And the only things that did make it out of my mouth were the things that I had physically rehearsed in my brain for a week straight.
Yeah.
And that was the closest I got to standing up to myself, or standing up for myself, was finally saying something like that. And I still, after the whole thing, was I should have been more direct. It didn't feel like she was even listening.
Did she pay full price?
Oh yeah, I charged her.
Okay.
I charged her the full price for the haircut. I didn't even mention it. To be honest with you, I didn't even say "Oh yeah, you were supposed to get no."
Yeah, no.
Also because the receptionist that told her husband that had left. It was in her last week that this whole thing had happened. And so I would have been "Well, she doesn't work here anymore. Mm-hmm. So sorry if that's what she told you, but
yeah." Well, see, for years, that's where I was stuck with freelance work.
Yes.
Because no one likes paying creatives for fucking anything. They just assume you love doing it. It's so fun for you.
And especially when they know that you're the one making the prices and you're the one that's in charge of it. They're "Oh, you can't just cut me." Let me cut everybody a fucking deal.
So many conversations. And I would tiptoe around them for the longest time. So many people would be "Well, I mean, I know it should cut." And mind you, when this is happening, it's projects, it would cost $1,000. And they're "Well, that's really tough for us. And, I only run a company that makes probably hundreds of thousands and millions a year. But, just 1,000's a lot for you to come with a camera and point it at." And it's
I think I know exactly the conversation that you're referring to just from the context of that.
Oh yeah, well yeah, probably actually, yeah. There was many versions of that with many different people, and it's there was always that thing where it was for a long time I couldn't just be "No, this is it or it's not."
Yeah.
Because there was always the worry of yeah, cool, I want to work with them, or I want the work in general, but it also does it leaned into a little bit of that people pleasing where I'm well, I don't want to make them think that they're wrong even though they are. And when I'm outside of that email thread or that phone call or that meeting, I'm angry and I'm I should have said this, right? But I think for me, I got so fed up with the "I should have said this" when I'm no, I know I want to and I know I can.
That you just started saying it?
I just started saying it to where it became a natural thing of now I have way less of those conversations because I think I was able to weed out a lot of the worthless, but you know what I mean? Sort of things and so now I can avoid a lot more of that. But even if something, and it's not all about money or creative projects or something, people in general, in any sort of thing that pops up like that, where I could take the route of "Oh no, you can walk on me, it's fine." I'm very much "Oh no, I'm super protective of my energy and my time now. And not saying that anybody who is a people pleaser isn't, but I just got hyper focused on that of no, I know what you would potentially take from me. And yeah, I am going to be selfish in the way of you don't get to take from me just because I want to make sure you're comfortable.
Well, and that's the thing is okay, if you offer anybody a discount on anything, they're going to take it.
Right.
Right.
because why would you not?
Of course.
And so if they think that there's a way that they are going to potentially save money or effort or time for themselves, and they think that they can get that by telling you that you don't deserve the money or the time or the effort, they literally will do that.
And people pleasing is like a gigantic problem in the creative world, because everybody is just like,
Yes.
oh my, I need money.
That's the only way you
I
can
hope I
make
can-
it really in the beginning.
So I have to say yes. I can't argue back or anything like that. So there's like a ton of people that are not. What?
Where's that button?
What's that button?
Yeah.
I didn't know there was a button on there.
Okay, I won't push it.
It's
Hey,
probably
you just
a
love
mute
pushing.
button.
You love pushing
Just
buttons.
mute it.
Here, I'll press it. Hello?
Can you hear
me?
anything? Yeah, I can hear you.
I can
Fine.
hear you guys. Yeah, it didn't do
It's
anything.
just nothing.
Okay.
It's just for looks.
for fun.
It's just a design
It's
element.
just for looks.
It's for fidgety.
Yeah.
But like when I think about that, and I'm just like, man, like I just realized like it's just not worth like the time and the effort. And again, especially like creatives are like super like always plagued with having those conversations, because nobody sees what they do as worth it, even though everybody watches TV shows and
And they all
movies and
want,
music. And
they all want a piece of it.
they want it for sure, but they never want to. And again, I don't want to make this episode about like some like creative business, like making money sort of thing and people pleasing. Like,
No, but
that's
it's a
just like
big part
an
of-
easy
it's
example.
also a big part of what you and I both do, though. And
Yeah.
I've like found myself almost having to like justify before I give people a price. Like, I'll have people that are like, oh, can you do this thing? And it's going to take me a whole day that I have to take off of work. And I'm like, I could potentially be making this much money on this day. So like, this is how much money I'm going to need in order for it to compensate me for that day.
I never tried when I did hair. I never ever charged like what I was supposed to. I always charged
I've-
under. And then my
yeah.
friends started coming to me, and I literally just didn't make money.
Yeah. And that's part of it too, is like, I had this I was really proud of myself. I had this really long appointment recently. It was 8.5 hours, and it was a color correction. It was a lot of work. It was a lot of product and time and effort and being on my feet. And when it came time to charge, I charged by the hour for those types of services. And when it came time to charge, I literally stood there for a second, and I was like, it's funny because I found this meme or like this reel, and I shared it, and the girl literally commented and was like, oh my gosh, because she could tell that it was probably about that appointment. But it was literally like, this girl was like, you can't charge them that much. It's so mean. It's the meanest thing you could do.
That's
like,
what my brain says.
Yeah. And that's like, and I'm like, no, like you did the work. You put in 8.5 hours of work, and like you.
And when
like,
people charge me for
Yeah.
anything, I'm like, here's your money.
Exactly. And she works in the industry, she like knows. And so in my brain, and we even had a conversation about it afterwards, after I posted this thing, because she saw it and she was like, oh my God. And I was like, this was literally me when you were checking out, because even after doing all of the things that I did for this person, I was still like, oh, maybe I should just take off like a little bit. Like that just feels so. But as soon as I said, oh, it's going to be this much, she just goes, okay.
Yep.
And then I kept thinking about it. I was like, is she going to come back to me? Like, is she going to keep coming and getting her hair done by me? Like, so even after I did do the thing of not people pleasing, I still was like, oh my God,
Yep.
how could I do this to someone?
And then you had like
Like-
the regret of like sticking up for yourself. Not that she made you do
No,
that, but
no,
like,
yeah.
just
And
what
she
you're
even
worth.
said, she was like, girl, I completely understand. Like, she's like, I get it. Like,
There
we
are
had a
people
whole
that just
conversation.
throw the price out there, and then it's fine.
Yeah.
So what were you about to say?
I was gonna say, what is working for me? That sounds like a question. I was gonna say, what is working for me? I'm leaving.
That's it. Goodbye.
Goodbye. I'm not gonna tell you what's working
And
for me.
she's not on the podcast anymore.
No, not after that one. Okay, I was gonna say, I don't know if I've talked about it on here, and I don't think I have, but I really love Phil Stutz, and I gave you his book. But it's amazing. It's helped me so much.
I
with
want
my
it next.
people
Did you finish
pleasing.
it?
No.
I'll bring you mine.
Okay.
Um,
I'm like, I want it.
it's
I wanna
so
read it.
freaking good. It's helped me so much with my people pleasing. Not that I'm like getting, over my people pleasing, but I don't get upset at the other person anymore. I just am learning each time, this is what you'll do next time. And then there are things that I've already like been able to like put my foot down about. But there's so many like practices in the book that you do like
that's what
internally.
I need the secrets. The
that
secrets
you,
of Phil Stutz.
it makes you feel the uncomfortableness like, because every time you go through it in your head, you're already going through the uncomfortableness. Your body doesn't know the difference between the
Yes.
shower conversation and the conversation you actually had. Your body doesn't know you're already dealing with the stress.
You
You
live
can
it every
handle
time.
it.
Yeah.
You can handle it. So if you just like internally do that work and tell yourself you can handle it and then go into it, that's how I got out of my job, which I loved my job. But the people pleaser in me didn't want to disappoint my staff. But I literally had to like sit there and be like, this is how they're going to feel. That's not your problem. They feel that way because you gave them a lot, and that's the best thing you could have done. And now you have to do something for yourself.
Yeah.
And yeah, Phil Stutz, man.
So what did people pleasing look like for you in general? Like before that?
Everything
Like
that we have said, every
Yeah.
single thing, I could relate to every single thing. And I
Okay.
still can. But it's the boundaries. It's the like not sticking up for myself when rude things are said. It's doing above and beyond. It was when I did hair, not charging enough. It's that I still haven't figured out my doula prices. It's everything in my life.
Yeah, because it can affect every aspect
It's so
of your life.
encompassing. It just like
Because
engulfs you.
it's like it's as simple as like even just like, well, what do you want to do tonight? I don't care, you can pick. Like, not only am I indecisive as all hell, but like I feel like I would rather just like be like, if there's even a chance that somebody might be uncomfortable with my decision, I don't want to make it.
Yeah.
So a lot of the time I just will
Right.
be like, I don't care, you make the decision.
See, and
Like
that,
you guys are like, what episode should we do today? And I'm
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
I don't care, you pick.
well, see that is something like that. That's a little bit of my people pleasing that still trickles in sometimes. But like with this show, like we've had the conversation where I will already have an entire plan, an idea in my mind of why we should do something.
Yeah.
But I never want things to be, it's the Ross show. Ross is in charge of everything. So I'm like, what if we did this? And then usually you guys are like, I'm down with whatever. And I'm like, I thought maybe we could. And you're like, you already, like, why are you asking?
Yeah,
you
you
know, like,
literally
just,
have
we
the
can just
plan.
go. We
Let's
can do
go.
it. Like, we're just down for whatever. But like, very, very particular things like that.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that also comes down to when I really care about the person or
Yeah.
care about the thing at hand. You know what I mean? Like, because it's like with us doing something like this, I don't want it to feel like the Ross show that Leah and Brittany are just here for, right? So I'm like, okay, I want all of our opinions are going in and we're all figuring out what we want to do and all this sort of stuff. Yes, I'm going to have an opinion on like why I think we should do something and shouldn't do something else. And cool, dope. But I want to make sure we're all talking about it. Where I think it's easier for me now to just like shut other stuff down is because I don't have that connection.
Yeah.
And I'm not actually worried about the result anymore.
Yeah.
Like the normal result of, oh my God, if I'm not a people pleaser right now, what happens because of that? I feel like I can easily shut that door of like, even if it's a potential client or an active client right now, it's like, no. My result needs to be that I respected myself and my boundaries.
Right, because do you want to keep that person as a client if they are going to continue to cross
Yeah.
those boundaries
And-
and disrespect you?
Exactly. And so like that's my thing. Even friendships or whatever else it is, it's like, man, like and I think we'll probably dive a lot more into this in an episode about like toxic relationships with like family and friends and stuff like that. But like a little bit of that comes from like that was a lot of where my people pleasing came from, like
Yes,
growing up.
100%.
Friendships and family, and I'm
Yep.
like, oh, I don't really feel like we have that much in common, but I'm just gonna pretend that we are and kind of go with the flow because I don't really want to make this weird. I don't want to upset you, and like especially a lot of the stuff that like has happened in the world over the last handful of years, and realizing I'm on like
Yeah.
opposite ends of a lot of people's beliefs. At first, there was a part of me that was like, oh no, I need to hear them out. I need to listen to them. I need to, because I don't want to make this weird. But I'm like, they're being combative to me. And I'm still like, because I'm so hyper self-aware, like we were talking about at the beginning of the episode, like I think each of us are so hyper like self-aware, but also aware of other people's emotions as well.
Yes.
That like it makes that people pleasing bridge pop up first. Like, okay,
Yeah.
if we're going to cross this right now, this is how we need to do it. Right. Cause I don't want to hurt them, or I don't like, even if I know that they're wrong, or I really, really think that they're wrong, I don't really want to go there and all that sort of stuff.
It
Where
just
like,
sucks to be like so highly sensitive, but also just like everything is always like, I just am taking the empathetic route. I'm taking the I care route.
that is the thing of like, that's the maybe probably one of the hardest parts of people pleasing is that being a people pleaser only affects you.
Yeah.
It's sort of almost like holding a grudge, right?
Yeah.
Holding a grudge doesn't hurt anybody other than you. So I think like when you're a people pleaser, that person that you helped, well, they get to win, or that person you didn't argue with. And again, it's not always about an argument or something, but like when you didn't stand up for yourself, that let them just get away with whatever or not learn a lesson. Because I've also become big on like when somebody does something wrong and I think they truly do need to know that they're wrong, I'm like, you need to learn.
Yeah.
And it's not about learning what I think is right. It's about learning what's right for you because I don't think you know, or you need to learn that that's not how you treat somebody or that's not how you talk to somebody.
Right.
And so like,
That's
but
not
it's
how you act in the checkout aisle.
Kathy.
God damn it, Kathy.
But it's like, it is like that self-awareness that makes us like hypersensitive in those situations,
Yes.
but we're also hypersensitive of, well, what could this do to them? But then when we avoid that entire situation,
What could they be going through that made them this way?
exactly.
Yeah.
But then when we avoid that situation, it
What does
only
it
hurts
do
us.
to
Yeah.
us. Yeah.
Because we're so aware, we're so empathetic, but then we're carrying that around
But
of like,
the worst part is like I know all of those things and I
Mhm.
still can't bring myself to say
yeah.
something.
Yeah.
And a lot of the time it's the shock. But if it's like someone that you're just like you said, if it's not something that you connect with, you don't have like you don't care for them in that type of way, it's so hard to like find it worth it sometimes. You know what I
Well, and
mean?
for me,
Sometimes I'm
it's
like you
almost-
can just let your world collapse in when it does. You will learn eventually.
Well, and that's my thing is it's not even that I don't care about these people. Like, obviously I don't care about the random person that like is being like a total dick in like the checkout aisle or whatever. But like in my brain, I'm like, if I say something, is this going to turn into a conflict that then is going to be a worse situation for me? Like if I call this person out on their stuff, like I don't know that person well enough to know that they're not just going to like explode on me and be like, well, you,
Right.
blah, 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 you know. And then I'm like, yeah, it's not
so hard
worth
to
it.
pick your battles in that way because how long my target lady I've been thinking about for weeks.
Yes.
For
I mean, I'm
weeks.
still talking about that
And
Meyer
I
lady. This
wish-
was months ago.
I wish I would have ruined her day. I really wish I would have
yeah.
ruined her day.
Oh, 100%. But I just froze.
Yep.
I just froze and I was like, that's fine. I will awkwardly stand here and wait while this line of people behind me that probably saw this whole thing just happen sits there and collectively sighs like, oh, that lady just cut not me, but everybody else.
Okay, now something I'm more interested in is because like I feel like right now our examples of people pleasing are sort of those outlier examples.
Those are the ones that I think
Oh,
bother me a
if-
lot.
Okay, so like
yeah.
what are more like personal? Like is that something that you know what I
Yeah,
mean? Like
no.
we're
My personal ones would be like boundaries of I feel like I've talked about this somehow in a lot of episodes, just people asking too much of me as if they don't see that I like am a
That you
whole
have
human
stuff
with a
going
whole
on.
life. So people asking too much of me and I don't know how to say no. So I'm forever doing favors. Same with Zach. Zach is the biggest people pleaser I've ever met.
can attest.
So annoying.
Making mental notes, so if I ever need anything that Zach can do,
He will not say
I
no.
will.
Literally, he
I
will
will be like,
yeah.
Zach, can you please change my tire?
And he will.
Oh, he would. He'd build you a whole new car.
Literally in a
Yes.
heartbeat. Affects me greatly because it's just people not respecting like my time and my life and anything that I have going on. But outside of that was like me not being able to correct people at work. That was terrible. Not that it was happening all the time. I just every single time there would be like a light dinging in my head like you should have said something. Why are you not saying something? This is so easy. You're not going to hurt their feelings. This is so different than what we're talking about as far as like confrontation. This is simply me going, you said that has lavender in it. It literally doesn't have any floral in it. It's vanilla. That's all I need to say. They need to know that information. It makes them better.
Right.
It will not come out of my mouth. I'll be like, that is great. I love the lavender in that.
Yeah.
That's so good.
Yeah. Interesting.
And because we talked about it, I just don't want to hurt them. But in turn, I'm now have someone on my staff that is giving false information. And two, I watched that happen. They're going to go, Brittany, you literally heard me say there was lavender in this. And I'm going to go, I know.
Well,
Yep, I sure did.
And that's the thing. It's not about being right or having the conflict. It's potentially avoiding a future problem
Yeah.
that all of this small
And
stuff
that's
stacks up
what
on.
helps prevent, like it really does if you're able to. And I will say there's been, as far as like if people are like really horrible to me, I can stick up for myself. It's the little things where, yeah, it's like, this might be a problem down the road, but I'm going to just like turn an eye because.
Yeah.
And I sometimes think maybe I'm wrong. If you guys think differently, like tell me. Like I sometimes think that that's more important than the major conflict because not trying to like noticing a bunch of small cracks and be like, that's not that big. That's not that big. Well, eventually it's just going to shatter if there's enough small cracks. Like, cool, let's address the small cracks now before they become such a bigger,
if it was like, I'm wondering if like in my childhood, someone like just belittled me every time I tried to speak.
Yeah, well, that's why I asked earlier, like, do we
What's the
have
root
we
of
thought
this?
about like where maybe it comes from?
Like,
I think when I was a kid, I was like annoying. I was like I never shut up. Like I talked a lot. I was annoying. I had high energy. And then as you get older and you realize that people find you annoying, you're like, oh, I need to do whatever I can to make sure that the people around me enjoy my company. And so I think for me, it was like, oh, I need to make sure that I'm being this way so that other people can like have a good time.
For me, it was the opposite. I never spoke until I started working at Lush. I don't know how have I said this on here as well? Don't know how I had any friends. Don't know. Like, I was weird. I was so socially awkward. I just wasn't all like fully like there with the world. And I was just forced to through retail and having to have like those customer interactions, because it's so much different than like majority of retail. It was so heavily like you sit down with people. There's so many memes online about Lush and how you walk in and like you're gonna give me your whole life story and I'm your therapist for the week or whatever. Like, that's so real. And so it opened me up in that way. And I just don't know if it was like something pre me actually, because when I talk now and who I am now, it doesn't make sense that I'm this way. I'm very sure of my opinions. You cannot sway me one way or the other on things that I'm like secure in.
Yeah. That you're sure about.
But there's something like I feel little every time I'm put into a people pleasing. I feel like I'm like 7 again.
Yeah.
And it's not I just want everyone to like me, because I didn't care when I was younger. I was just like going with the flow, doing whatever. There was no like, I was the older sibling. I was like the like blueprint for what was to come. So I didn't have that like I have to work for this, but no one was paying attention at the same time.
Yeah.
But there was nothing critical that I can remember. I just have always been like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I wonder if a part of it too is like as we get older, we become more aware of interactions we have with other people. That empathy part can grow huge. So then you're going to lead with that.
Yeah.
More than anything.
I've always been listening.
Yeah.
I've always been listening and absorbing and taking it in and just forever agreeing until I started to like come to and like have my own opinions and everything. And that's why I think now I'm like, well, I'm sure of what I think, but I don't know how to like navigate.
One of the only times that I feel like I'm like untouchable is like when I have road rage, like, or if I'm in a car, like if I'm like, why the fuck would you just cut me off? Like, I'm going to be like honking on that horn because it's like, oh my gosh, for some reason I am untouchable bitch in the car.
I mean, you can run anyone over.
There was
you
a
are not
time,
small in there.
You are in a machine.
Yes. There was a time I like passed this guy. He was stopped because a car in front of him was turning and I had some lady stuff going on and I needed to get home. And so he was stopped. I tried to go around him, and as soon as he saw me trying to go around him, he immediately floored it.
Dude, this shit pisses me off so bad.
Yeah.
This is what I mean. Like
it gets better.
God. Okay, sorry.
Flips me off as he passes me, and I'm like, all right, at least we're moving. So I get back behind the guy. He brake checks me, flips me off out the window again, and then we get to a stop sign. He gets out of his car, and literally I lock my car doors, and he is screaming profanity, spitting towards my car, flipping me off, and I literally just went.
It's just like you were in a rush, or you're mad that or whatever, and now we're in. This
But I
scenario.
was
You're out
like,
of your car now?
but I literally was like so untouchable in that moment. If somebody was literally like freaking out at me in the Meijer checkout line, like I feel like for some reason, like that in that situation, I couldn't just be like the person that's like, I'm like, please don't even acknowledge me. Like, it's fine that you just like wasted a bunch of my time after I waited in this giant line. Like, I don't know why, but I wish I had the confidence I had when I was driving.
So you want to be a transformer?
Yeah. Optimus, please recruit me. I don't know what I need to do.
That will
I
fix our
just
people
want-
pleasing
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah, if you can just
I
turn
just need
into
to be
a
a transformer.
car and then
Yeah.
just stomp
run
on
everybody
someone,
over. It's
then
fine.
it's fine.
Yeah.
Great. No more people pleasing.
But could you imagine if like you could talk to people from car to car? Because then it wouldn't be the same.
I also
Oh,
just want to
God.
know, like, with people in car, why do you think that that is the same thing people are going through and they're feeling as brave, or it's the same people that are in Meyer doing that?
God, who knows?
You know what I mean? I've had so many.
They're probably
like,
awful in most
experiences
aspects
like
of
that
their life.
in cars, and
Yeah.
people need to be careful in cars. Dude, people die every day,
Oh my
all day.
gosh.
That's
Right
true.
now, someone just
People
died
need to
in
be
a car accident.
careful.
It's probably true.
People need to be careful driving in the fast lane, driving in the slow lane. If you're going too slow, you're almost as dangerous as if you're going too fast.
You're a target regardless of what you're doing. You just people need to have more empathy, because why the fuck did that guy care that you needed to pass him?
Yeah.
You needed
No
to
idea.
get somewhere.
I needed to get somewhere.
And he was like, "How dare you get somewhere faster than I'm gonna get somewhere?"
Yeah. Like it's literally
Now
just
I'm out
like
on the corner at the stop sign.
yeah, flipping me off, spitting at my car, and I literally like cuz I used to get road ragey to the point where I would be flipping people off like that and be like, "What the
Really?
fuck?"
I did that, and then something similar like that happened to me, and I was 16, and like
And then you realize like, wow, this guy is so like
It was
so
so
torn up about this.
dangerous.
And it's like what you said where you were just like, I hope like I wish I could go back in time and ruin that lady's day. Like I am so glad like no offense because he probably went home and like beat his wife. So like sorry to her. But
Yeah.
like I'm kind of glad that like my little action, like that person
that was
was
enough
such
for
an
you, and you were
asshole
able to, yeah.
that like I was like, you know what? I don't even feel bad that I tried to pass this person. Like
He's already dealing with the worst of it. He's now
Yeah.
like sitting in shit, like with what he's done
Yeah.
over
It's
it,
like-
instead of just getting over it.
it's like he could have just been like, wow, that girl's an asshole. She just passed me and couldn't wait until, you know, I started moving again.
Well, yeah, like a normal
My
person.
biggest
Yeah.
takeaway from all of this is that no one is acknowledging, what is the word for Sonder? Like how we're each a person with a whole life that,
Yeah.
like, everything that I live and feel, like you live and feel, and all of the people that are acting like that just don't have the capacity to like
Yeah.
absorb that.
100%.
And
Well-
it sucks, but it's also not our problem.
Like, what were you going to do if I rear-ended you when you brake checked me?
Well, yeah, probably be even more pissed off. But I wonder, like, in those situations, like, does the people pleasing thing even matter, though? You know what I mean? Like, it's like, oh, well, this person doesn't.
But
Even the
that's what I
people
mean,
behind
like,
you in the
I
lines, like, it
wish,
doesn't.
like because there's this anonymity. Is that the word?
Animosity.
Animosity.
Where Nemo lives.
Anonymity.
Anonymity.
We'll write that one down. There's animosity when you're in a car because you're like I'm never gonna see this person again. And the same thing at
and
like
you
the
just don't
grocery
wanna be
store. Like you're probably never gonna
disrespected.
even like see this person again. Or
Well, and so, like, to Brittany's point, also, like, the whole, like, understanding that everybody is living their own individual life, right?
yeah,
I feel like that is like that's what I mean, like when I was saying earlier, like meet people where they are. It's not dumbing down a situation, it's not arguing, it's not even disagreeing, it's understanding like their perspective is this. And so
Everybody else but us has peanut brains.
exactly. Well, I mean, we do have a podcast. We are on a podcast, so we
we are
clearly
smart.
clearly have all of
And
the
we're
correct
doctors.
information.
we are doctors. We did determine that on one episode. And yeah, you know, you're not that smart if you don't have a podcast to spout all your opinions on.
Everything we say is actually factual, so
Well, yeah, obviously.
Yeah.
But like I do think like that all of that feeds into the idea of people pleasing, of like I feel like find that balance of like understanding like, okay, they have their perspective and their understanding of where they're coming from. Cool. That person who's trying to talk me down $5,000 because they think they need a project. It's like, okay, well, they're wanting to say they have a reason they're doing that. Sure. It might just be because they're a dickhead, but it's probably because of that and then other things too. Right. So it's like, okay,
yeah.
understanding like, okay, they need to save money. They need to do this. They need to do that. And then I can also immediately understand, okay, they're living their life. And guess what? I'm living mine. So I don't have to say yes to that because that then affects my life. So it's like, I can sit and be able to accept those things of like that person might be dumb or annoying or whatever it is, that person behind me in line, that person in traffic, that friend that I'm talking to that like we're seeing, you know, we're seeing the world completely differently or something. Like I feel like there's something to being able to acknowledge and then unlock that power that I think everybody has of like being protective of your energy. And again, it always doesn't have to be some big major conflict, but I think it is what you were saying, Brittany, of like their life is this and their perspective is this, and my life and perspective is this, and those don't have to be the same thing. And it's also not up to me or my energy or my time to help guide them in their life in a way that I believe, from my perspective, they should be going.
Would benefit them, but that's not my problem.
Exactly. Like that person needing to save money, I can empathize with you, but I don't have to sympathize with that. It's not my problem.
Yeah.
That person, like,
go find some way to spend less.
and mind you, this is like
You're just changing the quote around. So go find less.
Yeah.
You said go find money. Go find a way to spend less.
Go find a way to spend less.
Like if you don't want what I'm offering, then you can go somewhere else and you can take your opinion and the way that you see the situation elsewhere and find somebody that will work for that amount of money or for that amount of effort or time.
I think that just goes to any type of relationship. Like whether it's family, whether it's friends, whether it's like anything at all, it's like being able to identify like, okay, like I don't have to bring myself into your world if it's going to negatively affect mine. And like, again, I'm sitting here spouting all this off as a really, really, really empathetic person. You know what I mean? Like, so I'm not just sitting here as like trying to be some hard ass, like,
You're like,
I
Leah
don't
and
care
Brittany,
about.
fuck everybody else.
No,
that's
but
not
that's
at
the
all.
thing is like
Honestly, what
I
I'm
need
saying.
that. Like I need the secret of like how you became less, like not less empathetic, but like the way that you became less concerned about like other people in regards to having more respect for yourself. Because me as an individual, and we've gone over this, I have really bad self-esteem, and so I just value other people's comfort and other people's like views over my own a lot of the time, because I just, in my brain, that's just how it is.
I know that, like, like when you were like, well, maybe I'm questioning, like, if I'm right about this, maybe their perspective, whatever. I know that I'm right. Well, that sounds terrible. In certain situations,
you definitely do.
Where I'm just like not gonna argue it because what's the point? But I really think that as far as like yours goes, every time it's little blips for everyone else and for me too. It's such little blips. The shitty people in the grocery store, or like when you're like, oh, I don't want to charge her the normal price that anyone, if you didn't do her hair, she's going somewhere else and probably going to get charged more because you're so scared of like, charging what you're worth. It's just little blips. And I think if we start slowly, like mine was quitting my job because I've been there for almost 10 years. It's the only thing I knew. But just being like, what is the very worst outcome ever?
Well, and also looking at it as a blip. Hey, I might be uncomfortable for this tiny blip of time, but if I don't make myself uncomfortable for this tiny blip of time, I will be kicking myself for it for a week later.
You're going to just be uncomfortable in a different way for a lot longer because you didn't stick up for yourself.
Yeah. And then I worked for, let's say, 8.5 hours and didn't charge the amount that I should have. And then I can't pay my bills correctly because I wasn't charging my worth.
It's the small crack thing we were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll just do this right now. Oh, we add a little crack. Oh, I'll just say yes to this. We add a little crack.
It's so easy.
And then eventually, what happens? Obviously you're not doing this, but like with the hair situation, what happens if, let's just say, every single customer you didn't charge properly and you were working 8-hour days and doing all this sort of stuff? Then what happens is at some point you hate doing hair. So then you're like, fuck this. I don't want to do this anymore.
Hello, me.
I don't want to be here. I need to get out of here. Right. And hey, maybe that's just the way the path was supposed to go. And that was the right answer. Right.
Yeah.
Because I'm also not going to look at Brittany and be like, you have to work at Lush forever. That's right. I think you should leave. Absolutely. But like, those would all be a bunch of tiny cracks that then would build up into this. And now we have no choice, but the foundation is crumbled. And now I'm super uncomfortable and I hate this and I'm super upset and all that sort of stuff. And
a lot of the time I'm mad at people that I love because I didn't just like say, I can't do that on that day. I will be overextending myself if I do that
and
or
it's
whatever.
Hard. It's difficult, but like I also think it's never as big of a deal as our brain tells us it is.
Because again, like I said, everyone's living their own life. So if
you put yourself in their shoes, then you'd be like, oh, I don't think I'd be that upset if somebody told me like, oh, like honestly, when people cancel plans with me, I'm like, oh,
it's so great. It's so wonderful.
When people are like, oh,
it's the sexiest
I actually
thing
can't
you
make
can
it.
Canceling plans is my love language.
Yes.
But also what happens if and when, like, let's say you do say, hey, I'm not available, person, I can't do that. Then what happens if they get super angry at you and they're like, you're a bad friend and blah, blah, blah. Then you have a super clear answer of like, oh, wait, this is not a good person for my life.
Yeah.
So it's like,
And
no matter what,
weed 'em out
you get,
before
yes.
it's too late.
No, it's the same thing like with the client thing of like, okay, cool, I can figure out like what clients like are good and bad for me, and like, okay, cool, if enough of them I'm saying no to or whatever, or they keep asking for discounts or whatever, it's like, all right, we're not a good fit.
Yeah.
In the same way, like friendships work the same way.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, okay, cool, if you're actually gonna,
And again, like in my brain, like let's say that client that I was like, clearly there's something's just not connecting here, and like I should tell them to go elsewhere. In my brain, I knew that, but
Yeah.
in like my physical,
You will do anything
being able
to
to say it
convince
out loud,
yourself.
I was literally like, "Come on Wednesday."
yeah,
Come on
in.
out. Come on
in.
out.
Come
It's
see me.
fine.
I'll
Yeah.
be here.
And it all does, I think, all of this circles around the idea of like self-esteem and confidence and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Of like when you can understand, like, I think it's one thing to understand who you are and how confident you can or cannot be and all that sort of stuff, but then making decisions based off of that and taking the actions is another thing. But like I almost think that that's what it is, because we can always see ourselves, unless you're like an egotistical maniac who is already a bad person anyway. Like a normal person will probably see themselves as less than whatever situation
Yes.
they're interacting with. So it's like, oh, well, I can't hurt their feelings because that would be rude of me, and they need to walk all over me or whatever. And again, it's the empathy thing. It's everything we've been talking about this entire episode.
But also, traditionally, your loved ones will not make you feel that way. And if you do get to a position, and me too, I've been better. I'm pretty good with my loved ones. My side of the family, I can always like say my piece or whatever. But like sometimes people are not trying to hurt you, and they just are not like fully aware of like the
and
circumstance.
That's what it is. Like it's usually never as big as what we think it is, because when it hurts us, we're like, this is the fucking worst thing ever. But it's like, no, that dude in traffic
like-
is just a mentally unstable person.
Yeah.
No, that bad client who didn't want to pay me what I'm worth. No, they just need to save money, and they don't understand how bad that fucks me over when they don't want to pay me.
Yeah.
Like, you know, it's like, all right,
And it sucks because
cool.
we're like, do the fucking work to realize what you're saying, because this is disrespectful. But on the other hand, like, if they don't want to do that work, that is not my problem. They can keep shooting their shot at other creatives and keep getting turned down and not get the work that they want, or get poor work because they didn't want to pay for it.
Yeah. And I think a lot of it just circles around like the idea of like, I've been hearing this a lot lately of like, you know, when you're saying yes to something, you're saying no to something else. So like, okay, if Brittany is saying yes to going hang out with a friend that like, you know, whatever, all right, you're saying no to hang out with the kids. You're saying no to something else. You know what I mean? Like you're saying yes to a super cheap client. You could be saying no to the properly
Yeah.
paying one. Like
Yeah.
that sort of thing of like being protective
And that
of that.
is why I get so upset when I get put in those positions. Exactly that, because then I'm like, man, this is what I really want to do, and I wish I would have just.
Yeah.
I said no to the thing that I wanted, and I said yes because that makes this person more comfortable.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they don't care that I'm like yearning for
Uncomfortable.
this thing. They just
Yeah.
know that I'm doing this favor for them or whatever it is.
Right.
And they might
right.
not even know it half the time.
Exactly.
There will be times that like I'll agree to doing something, and I will be like at the thing thinking about like, oh, I really wanted to get this done today, and they don't know because all they wanted to do was like hang out with me. It's not like
Yeah.
they're, you know, not everybody's putting you in a position where like they realize like, oh, you could have been doing this and you'd rather be doing that. Because realistically, if like one of you guys were like, if we were hanging out and you were just like, man, I really wish that I was at home with Daphne, I'd be like, go hang out with Daphne.
Right.
Like,
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
I get that. I've been that person where I'm like, man, I just want to be at home on my couch. But like also, you know, if you make plans with somebody and they seem super excited about it and all of that stuff, and you don't want to let them down, then like, of course you're just like, yeah, like I'll go, and like I'm not going to tell them that like I'd rather be doing this thing where I could maybe be making money if I was like working that day, or like I could be relaxing at home instead of like driving 2 hours to like go to Cleveland or, you know, something like that. But I feel like more times often than not, like the people that I'm making the time for probably have no idea that like I'm like, oh man, like
what you're like
part of me
giving up
wishes
for it.
that like I
yes.
could just do this other thing, you know.
And again, because their life and perspective is theirs, ours is ours. You know what I mean?
And unless
So,
you
yeah,
like
that's-
express that,
Right,
again,
right.
like if I was better about being like, hey, like I would really like to do this, but I'd really like to do this more, and it could be as easy as just saying that.
And we're gonna do that, Leah.
we're gonna, damn it, we're gonna do it. By
You hear that?
gum.
We're gonna do it.
Yeah, I think let's wrap this episode up. Because I think that is kind of the biggest thing. You know what I mean? Like that's sitting here as the one who like no longer people pleases, right? That is what worked for me. It's just like, no, I'm gonna say the thing, and not in an argumentative way, not for the sake of conflict. I don't love
Just,
conflict.
Hey, here's
I'm not.
perspective from my
Yeah, and it's
my
like
point of view.
that isn't how this is going to work. Like I have told people in the past that like literally like, hey, if this is how you continue to do things, do not hire me anymore. You know, if I'm being hired as a freelancer or something to come help on someone's team, I've literally told people, do not hire me. And then guess what? They didn't hire me anymore, and I no longer had the stress and annoyance of doing their terrible jobs. And it was fine because like also I think like when we feel like whatever we feel like we're lacking, we have something else in its place. And sometimes I don't think we can have that other thing in its place until we make room for it. And a lot of that not having the room can come from a place of making room for things that don't actually benefit us at all by
Yeah.
being a people pleaser. And so like, I don't know, for me, like if I was going to leave somebody with this, like something in this episode, like I really do. It's again, I will continue to emphasize this. It's not about like all of a sudden being super argumentative or worrying about your opinion being right or whatever. It's like learning to not belittle yourself in every situation, learning that you don't deserve to get walked on, learning those perspective things that plays in with the empathy part. But it really does come down to just working on your self-confidence. And I know that that's such a broad thing. That's a whole
I
other
know.
podcast episode in itself. And that's easier said than done. It took me years to navigate
I'm
that.
doing it tomorrow. Thanks.
Like, okay, perfect. Perfect.
The next
I'm
time
glad it
somebody
worked.
comes into the checkout aisle and steals my cash register,
I'm beating
just-
their ass.
I'm gonna just walk
it's a
up.
bad day for them.
I'm gonna just walk up to them and be like, "Hi." I'm just gonna stand right next to them and make them
Hey.
vastly uncomfortable and be
That's
like,
Leah's
"Hi."
meanest. Hi.
Hi.
This is my.
Hi. Hey.
Hey there.
And they're gonna be like, hello. I'm gonna be like, "Hi, yeah, you saw me walking to this register, right? Are you paying for my stuff, or are you gonna get back in line?"
So nice. What if we just started doing? That was so nice of you to insist on paying for my thing.
I
Yeah.
think you're going to get in fights if you do that, which is
Oh.
not what I was saying to do. I don't
Wait,
know if we
you
should
don't want me to get in fights?
Oh, yeah.
I'm leaving here and gonna
get it-
go.
just get in a fight.
Yeah, scream at
I'm
someone
not a
at the
people pleaser
stop sign.
anymore. Punch them in the face. They have
God.
nothing to do with you or your life.
No.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's the self-confidence thing,
Yeah.
which is hard for all of us and difficult to navigate and difficult to build up. And I get like, but I just think that like when you understand your self-worth better, that people-pleasing thing becomes less important. And that doesn't mean that you're a bad person, doesn't mean you don't care about people, because I think that's what our brains tell us is like, if we're not pleasing everybody, it means we don't care. No. You care about them. You just know that you care about your well-being a little bit more, which is what we're supposed to do anyway.
I want to
Tea.
stop caring about them.
Yeah.
Well,
I
the
don't-
random people. The random people.
We're leaving here and
You're gonna.
We're
You're gonna. If something happens in traffic on your way home,
I'm gonna text you guys and I'm gonna be like, I'm at the store and you're never gonna guess what happened.
No, she's actually like, someone bail me out, please.
hey, so I ended up in jail.
Can someone come stand up for me? I'm scared.
Ross has to drive to Target.
I gotta like find which checkout audio, self checkout. Okay, I come up like, hey, listen, she was gonna check out. It's really not that big a deal. You guys are gonna get out of here at the same time anyway. It's cool. Like actually, one just opened behind you. It's not a big.
I'm gonna
deal.
need you to head over there.
Yeah, cool. Well, okay, if there's anything to take away from
yeah,
this episode,
Jesus,
guys,
I'm trying to leave.
it's yeah, just take this away from the episode. Hire me to come be your anti people pleaser for you. How about that?
Okay,
I like that.
I'm
yeah.
gonna hire you, but is it okay if I don't pay you?
Can I use this coupon? It's expired.
I see where this is going, and the answer to both of you is yes, because I care about each of you so much.
Honestly,
Same.
Should we hit that button? Wait. No socials. Don't follow us.
Honestly, same pod.
That's where you can find us now, Brittany.
I'm gonna hit that button.